Inglawa and welcome to MI Radio's Myanmar Today. I am Agajo. Today we have reports on MOPFI inviting all stakeholders to evaluate and suggest CERP. JMC resuming meeting with representatives at different levels. Quarantine centers needing some requirements like food and transport means. MMPO's fourth donation of basic foodstuffs to film industry laborers. All of that on this edition of Myanmar Today, but for now, let's take a look at what's happening in local news. The Ministry of Hotels and Tourism held a video conference with the U.S. ASEAN Business Council, USABC, on 22nd of July to exchange the good attitude and manners for tourism to promote the cooperation in the processes for keeping the tourism sector alive in the post-COVID-19 pandemic. Deputy Minister for Hotels and Tourism U Tin Le and the ministry officials joined the meeting. At the meeting, the Deputy Minister discussed the situation of the COVID-19 in Myanmar, procedures to analyze the tourism impacts, COVID-19 Economic Relief Plan CERP, stimulus package and loans in accordance with the ministry's COVID-19 Myanmar Tourism Strategic Roadmap, activities for the development of the human resources, procedures to be able to reopen the local tours in line with the instructions of WHO, UNWTO, and the Ministry of Health and Sports, coordination to implement travel bubble/travel corridor with the regional countries with better COVID-19 control and protection activities and the performance of the ministry. As stability regained after a threat of the coronavirus, about 6,000 factories and workplaces are resuming their operations in Yangon region. However, about 160 factories and workplaces are stay closed, according to the Factory and General Labor Laws Inspection Department. Although about 6,000 factories and workplaces reopened, about 160 factories and workplaces suspended or terminated with a reduction of labor, that is said by an official from the Factory and General Labor Laws Inspection Department. The number of unemployed labor is increasing and they are being faced with difficulty because of the closure of the factories and work establishments. The Ministry of Health and Sports urged the reopened factories and workplaces to follow the mandatory health guidelines to contain the spread of the coronavirus infection. Myanmar's maritime trade constituted 85.74% of rice exports and generated an estimated income of $560.8 million as of 3rd of July in the current fiscal year, as per data from Myanmar Rice Federation. Earlier, border trade was relatively high compared to sea trade in terms of rice exports. Since the previous financial year, border trade has dropped and currently it accounts for just 14.26% of the total rice exports. Rice exports through the borders have generated an estimated $87.186 million in the current financial year. Myanmar primarily exports rice to China through the borders. However, trade in agricultural products has been halted on account of China clamping down on illegal trade and China's precautionary measures to contain the spread of the coronavirus. The Department of Archaeology and National Museum in Magwe region has listed a total of 284 religious edifices in Yezajo Township of Pakoku District for renovation. Officials recorded 33 Buddhist temples in Chatsujin village, 117 in Aonan village, 74 in Mau Outlet village, and 60 in Mau Out village, respectively. U Myin, Deputy Director of Archaeology and National Museum of Magwe region, said, quote, "All of these temples are the artworks of late Gongbao era. According to the procedures, we will submit the estimated cost and seek permission of regional government to conduct inventory in the first stage of the renovation. After receiving the permission, we will start the renovation works," unquote. That's all with the local news. Now we will move on to our first report. Bidangsulo held its fourth-day meeting of the 17th regular session on Wednesday. U Sa-aung, Deputy Minister for Planning, Finance and Industry, reported and clarified CERP with 7 goals, 10 strategies, 36 action plans, and 78 actions, covering a broad range of fiscal and monetary measures. Phil and Tora Swissin have more.
In an effort to overcome the negative impacts of COVID-19, the Ministry of Planning, Finance and Industry, MOPFI, has issued a comprehensive economic stimulus plan, which is called COVID-19 Economic Relief Plan, CERP. It was launched on the 27th of April of 2020, and CERP includes 7 goals, 10 strategies, 36 action plans, and 78 actions, covering a broad range of fiscal and monetary measures. Several of the measures in the plan have already been implemented gradually to help the crisis management in financial, social, and economic and other various sectors. Piranzu Loro held its 4th-day meeting of the 17th regular session on Wednesday. Usa Ang, Deputy Minister for Planning, Finance and Industry, reported and clarified CERP.
စိုက်ပျိုးရေးကဏ္ဍဟာမြန်မာစီးပွားရေးရဲ့အရေးကြီးကဏ္ဍဖြစ်လို့စိုက်ပျိုးရေးနဲ့ပတ်သက်တဲ့လုပ်ငန်းတွေကိုအဓိကထားပြီးမြင့်တင်ပေးနိုင်ရန်အကြံပြုချက်ကိုအကျွမ်းမဲ့ထောက်ခံအပ်ပါ
The Lotto representative has suggested that CERP should prioritize the recovery processes in agriculture sector as it plays an important role for our country. We absolutely agreed on the suggestion. As we can see, the budget plan for agriculture sector is the largest allotment in CERP. The Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock and Irrigation has been provided about 92 billion kyats for the implementation of the CERP processes and about 600 billion kyats for farmers to provide loans with a low interest rate. Nearly 700 billion is allocated to agriculture sector to make improvements and to enable the farmers to buy necessary input resources. The farmers who plant any crops are supposed as MSMEs, and they are provided with the loans through Myanmar Economic Bank and Myanmar Agricultural Development Bank. It is still challenging to provide every household with sufficient recovery support, but the CERP processes are going to carry on in coming 2020 and 2021 fiscal year if necessary. Providing the direct support to the public is just an immediate solution, but it will not be sustainable in the long term. Creating job opportunities is a sustainable solution for the long term. CERP supports e-commerce and social commerce to purchase by using debit card and credit card to receive tax correctly and effectively. The CERP has already included recovering the processes for the national GDP, and economic recovery plan will include strategies and action plans to make stronger in recovering the national GDP. In the wake of COVID-19, the foreign investment is on a decrease in the world. The commitments and offers for foreign direct investment in Myanmar remain strong. In a few years, there will be also large-scale projects with the foreign direct investment, according to the Ministry of Investment and Foreign Economic Relations.
As the CERP is a living document, the additional necessary documents can be provided according to the suggestion from the Lotto representatives and the stakeholders. Lotto representatives are invited to monitor, evaluate, and suggest the COVID-19 Economic Relief Plan, Economic Recovery Plan, and the implementation processes. In monitoring the implementation processes for CERP, the Lotto representatives can cooperate and give suggestions to the respective ministries and departments directly or through Ministry of Planning, Finance and Industry or through Lotto.
That's a report on MOPFI inviting all stakeholders to evaluate and suggest CERP. The Joint Ceasefire Monitoring Committee resumed its meeting on the 22nd of July at National Reconciliation and Peace Center in Yangon, attended by several representatives of the NCA-signed organizations. As this meeting is held amid COVID-19, JMC hopes to change the pattern of the meeting, where even if the meeting can be interrupted by COVID-19, but the task of JMC can be implemented. Willison has the full report.
Under the Agreement of Nationwide Ceasefire Agreement signed on 15 of October 2015, The two major bodies were formed between the Union of Myanmar government and 8 ethnic arms organizations, which are known as Joint Ceasefire Monitoring Committee and the Union Peace Dialogue Joint Committee. The JMC includes union, state, local levels to implement ceasefire monitoring at different levels. The main purpose of this forming organization is to preserve peace among each other at the highest level with the collaborative work between government and NCA signed organizations. And it also does constant monitoring of the situation, which is known as JICM, Joint Implementing Coordination Committee, which is responsible for the collaborative work between the government and the organizations for peace process. After 7 months of holding the meeting between these organizations on 22nd of July, the meeting was resumed again, attended by the representative of organizations and the government, and the meeting was held at the National Reconciliation and Peace Center in Yangon. Giving the opening remark at the meeting, Reverend Saw Matthew A., Vice Chairman 2 of JCMU, said,
The work and the contribution of JMC to the peace and reconciliation of the nation is not going to stop. The message I would like to give today as the chairman today here is, I encourage everyone here to build up the confidence in oneself and be energetic with what we do. There are times when there is so much of hardship in working between the two bodies of armed forces. Only when we have trust in ourselves and among each other, then we can progress further in our works of peace process. Another important aspect is we all need to have transparency in what we do. When I say transparency, it's not just about the transparency between the two bodies of these organizations, but we also need to have clear and transparent views on the civilians from conflict-affected areas. We are part of this civilian. I encourage everyone to have a transparent outlook on civilians as well.
Reverend Saw Matthew A. also stressed the need of the importance of knowledge sharing between each other, which is also vital in building mutual trust, and importance of capacity building for the progress of the work, where TSC, Technical Secretariat Center, will play a big role in it. Speaking at the meeting, Uma Mangyeng, Vice Chairman 2 of JMCU, also said,
In the process of capacity building and mutual trust, we have experienced that these civil representatives play a big role, and this is the important part of peace process a whole. Using the advantages both sides have, we must use these resources and work for further process abiding by the rules and regulations under JMC. This is why we all must make sure that we understand the importance of these civilian representatives in this meeting. It is the collaboration of civil representatives we have come a long way in this journey, and I want to encourage everyone here that let us keep this way, highlighting importance to civil representatives and go forward.
Tura Uboni, a civilian representative of JMCU, also spoke at the meeting, and he said,
As we are going on this JMC walk in the midst of COVID-19, we need to discuss on how we are going to implement the agreements we sign between each other while working in a new normal situation. There was a 2-year suspension of this GMC meeting, but we need to prepare for any other suspension of the meeting. In the future, although the meeting might be suspended, we need to carry on the work of GMC. Even though the meeting was suspended, we are grateful to Technical Secretariat Center for its progressive work during this meeting suspended period. I encourage everyone here to work for long-lasting peace in the country with our abilities, knowing the importance of civilian representatives in this peace process.
Also present at this meeting were the representative of JMCS of Chiang State, the Nindari region, Kayin State, Mon State, Bago region, and those from district level of Lincoln and Papun. This is Williamson for MI Radio.
That's the report on JMC resuming a meeting with the representatives at different levels. It has been 2 months that the government let the returnees to enter. Among all the returnees, 154 returnees have recovered and 55 patients are under the treatments. There are a total of 310,457 people under the facility quarantine. In some regions in the country, there are a lot of difficulty about the food in the quarantine centers and transportation of the lab samples. Bomo and Jianai Lauga have details.
As a lot of the returnees are coming back from the abroad by the relief flights, the government has arranged them to stay at the facility quarantine for 21 days since May. It has been 2 months that the government let the returnees to enter. Among all the returnees, 154 returnees have recovered and 55 patients are under the treatments. There are a total of 310,457 people are under the facility quarantine. About the quarantine centers in Yangon, U Tonton U, president of the Yangon Rescue Organization, spoke to MI Radio about the quarantine centers in Yangon.
Firstly, we started contact tracing when we found out the local transmission in every township with the cooperation of the health workers and other administrators. Then we took them to respective quarantine centers. Then for the returnees, we waited them at the airports and other gates to measure their temperatures. Then they have to stay at the facility quarantine center for 21 days, whether they are free from COVID-19 or not. Our organizations has helped 3,000 people all to their respective quarantine centers, including hotel and hospital quarantine. This is a good prevention in controlling the spread of the imported cases. Staying at quarantine is the second effective way to prevent the infections, in my opinion. But we have some difficulties in this situation. Some don't want to follow the rules of quarantine centers, especially those staying at hotel quarantine. Some challenges in quarantine centers are the foods and water supply. The government also gives us a lot of support, but sometimes we have to fill some requirements for them. As we are the only volunteer organizations, we need some requirements from the government. As there will be a lot of returnees from relief flights, we prepare a lot for them. But some quarantine centers are not enough for returnees. Some have to wait for the quarantine centers.
Union Minister Dr. Wimya also said at the video conferencing with the civil society organization that COVID-19 is not found spreading in the local community, but people returning from abroad may carry the imported disease. Thus, quarantine is very important in this time. The Union Minister also said that he will address the issues in the quarantine centers across the country, like the difficulty of food and transportation, by coordinating with the other relevant departments. In some regions in the country, there are a lot of difficulty about the food in the quarantine centers and transportation of the lab samples. With the help of the Ministry of Health and Sports, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Myanmar International Airlines has brought back thousands of Myanmar citizens with the relief flights. Dawn Nai Nai Wintain, Secretary of the Survival Aid Organization, spoke to MI Radio about how they participate in the COVID-19 prevention as a society organization.
ဟုတ်ကဲ့ကျမတို့ဒါရှင်တိုင်းကူညီမှုအသင်းအနေနဲ့ရတော့ဗောနော်ဒီ COVID-19 အတွက်ကျမတို့တန်တရားရှိတဲ့လူနာတွေစောင့်ကြည့်လူနာတွေအားလုံးတည်ယူဖို့အတွက်ဆိုပြီးတော့မှကျမတို့ဆက်စခြင်းပါ
Our organization held for an ambulance in carrying the patients and suspected person as to the COVID-19 prevention process. There are about 50 volunteers to help at the quarantine center, but 20 volunteers have to be on standby at the quarantine centers. Despite the restrictions, some follow the rules, but some didn't. When we look at the factories, there are a lot of workers in those factories. They wear the mask, but they are weak in the social distancing. We also have a lot of challenges in carrying the patients, but we protect ourselves as much as we can, like wearing the PPE and face masks and others.
There are currently 343 COVID-19 confirmed cases in the country, with 6 deaths and 280 recoveries.
That's a report on quarantine centers needing some requirements like food and transport means. Since the 16th of March, not only the film production but also the film screenings have been temporarily shut down in the wake of the COVID-19 alert. The closure of the film industry has already for nearly 4 months, and the film industry laborers are facing the serious crisis currently. Myanmar Motion Picture Organization (MMPO) donated the basic foodstuffs to film industry laborers, supporting their living amid COVID-19 crisis. Pyo has more.
Myanmar Motion Picture Organization (MNPO) donated the basic foodstuffs to film industry laborers, supporting their living amid COVID-19 crisis. It is the fourth time for MNPO donating for the film industry laborers, and this time, Tamara families also participated in the donation by providing rice, edible oil, salt, beans for 1,600 people from 10 laborer classes of film industry. Uzome Handamye, Secretary 1 of MNPO, spoke to MR Radio about the donation.
လူတန်းခဲ့တာဆိုလို့ရှိရင်တော့ဒီကိုဗစ်ကာလမှာဒါစရုဒ္ဓအကျင့်ပေါ့စရုဒ္ဓအကျင့်မှာတော့အခုလောလောဆယ်လူရဲ့အကျင့်ရတော့ဒါတက်မတော်ကြီးရည်လေးတယ်
Today's donation is the fourth time for film industry laborers by MMPO in the wake of COVID-19 crisis. Tamil families have supported the donation for this time. Rice, edible oil, salt, beans, and eggs are donated by Tamara, and MMPO added the donation with chicken sausage and dry side dish. There are 15,000 people from 10 labor classes of this industry. The donation will be held for 3 days. Yesterday, the supporting actors were donated and film industry laborers from distribution, screenplay writing, directing, producing, editing, main casting, theaters, and back music are being donated today. Tomorrow, the MMPO is going to donate film industry laborers from the basic production layer.
Since 16th March, not only the film production but also the film screenings have been temporarily shut down in the wake of COVID-19 alert. The closure of the film industry has already for nearly 4 months, and the film industry laborers are facing the serious crisis currently. Spoke to MR Radio, Umentu, who is working as an editor in the film industry for over 20 years, said the difficulties of the basic film industry laborers.
အခုအားဆိုတစ်ခါမှမကြုံဘူးတဲ့ဟာမျိုးကျွန်တော်တို့ကြုံခဲ့ရတာပေါ့လေသူတမိုင်းဝင်မဲ့ပေါ့ရုပ်ရှင်သမားတွေဟာအားလုံးဒုက္ခရောက်ကြတာပေါ့အကုန်လုံးဘာအလုံးမှမရှိကြတော့ဘူးလေ
At present, we are facing the crisis which we've never experienced in the Myanmar film industry. The whole film industry can produce anything or any screening and nothing else. The cinema are still closed and the production are still disallowed. Currently, the living of film industry laborers is really hard. In this time, MMPO donate the basic foodstuff which is really necessary for the film industry laborers.
Speaking to MR Radio, Uwe Myai, Joint Secretary 2 from Myanmar Motion Picture Organization, said.
ဒီဥရုလူဝတန်းရတဲ့ဥစ္စာတစ်ခေါက်နဲ့တစ်ခေါက်မှာအလှခံရတာတော်တော်ခက်ခဲတယ်။ဘာကြောင့်လဲဆိုတော့ဒီ
MMPO has organized and funded for the donation for every time. But one donation after another, it is hard to ask people for donation. Almost everyone is hurt in this period. So, the donors can participate in the donation frequently. If the closure period takes longer, we have to think how we should do for film industry and even for the donation.
According to Uzome Handamye, the MNPO is coordinating with the Ministry of Health and Sports, the Ministry of Information, and also the Ministry of Religious Affairs and Culture for reoperation of the film industry. The reoperation of the Myanmar film industry will take some more months and still far away.
ကျမ်းမာရေးဝန်ကြီးနောက်တစ်ခုကပြန်ကြားရေးဝန်ကြီး
The officials have come and checked the demonstration for producing processes, film series, and commercial videos in accordance with health guidelines. We hope that the re-operation for the film series and commercial videos producing is going to be run next month, but the screening has been checked yet, so it will take some more months to open the theaters.
I am Tilde Ridu. This is news reported from Myanmar Radio.
That's a report on MMPO's fourth donation of basic foodstuffs to film industry laborers. And that's all we have for today's reports, and it's time to check on some international news here on Myanmar Today. Chinese President Xi Jinping, also General Secretary of the Communist Party of China Central Committee, on Wednesday inspected the northeast China's Jilin province. In Lishu County in Siping City, Xi visited a demonstration zone of green food raw material production base and a farmers' cooperative. He learned about the situation of the food production, the production and utilization of the black soil, and large-scale operation of the agricultural mechanization. She later visited the Shibin Batom Memorial Hall, where he relived the history of the revolution and cherished the memory of the revolutionary martyrs. Chinese embassy in the U.S. on Wednesday strongly condemned Washington's request to close the Chinese consulate general in Houston, Texas, saying the move was a political provocation unilaterally initiated against China by the U.S. side. Here is an excerpt from the full statement of the Chinese embassy in the United States. On the 21st of July, the U.S. apparently demanded that Chinese consulate general in Houston cease all operations and events within a time limit. It is a political provocation unilaterally launched by the U.S. side, which seriously violates international law, basic norms governing international relations, and the bilateral consular agreement between China and the U.S. China strongly condemns and firmly opposes such an outrageous and unjustified move which sabotages China-U.S. relations. Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed said Tuesday his country, Egypt, and Sudan have reached a major common understanding which paves the way for a breakthrough agreement on a massive dam project that has led to sharp regional tensions and led some to fear military conflict. Ahmed's office said in a statement which was posted on Twitter, quote, "The extraordinary meeting concluded with all parties reaching a major common understanding which paves the way for a breakthrough agreement," unquote. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa, a mediator who chaired Tuesday's online meeting of African Union, confirmed there would be further negotiations. California residents received self-swabbing kits to test themselves for COVID-19 at an official test center in Los Angeles. Hospitalizations attributable to COVID-19 in Los Angeles County were at their highest on the 19th of July.
Well, they're doing it to themselves, so it's safer for them and it's safer for our employees here.
And that's all we have for today. Thanks for joining me on Myanmar Today. I am Agajo. Have a great day, everyone. Stay home, stay safe. Goodbye.